Welcome to Practicing Life podcast. I am your host, Ashley Pitzer. So the other night I had a dream, and dreams are important. A lot of times people discount them or they can't even remember them, but your dreams are often where your subconscious is playing out things and they're sending, there's a lot of messages if you can interpretate your dreams. So the other night I had a dream that I needed to do a podcast on self-pity. Self-pity is like thriving in the United States. I can't speak to other countries, but boy, oh boy, has self-pity become just a way of being an acceptable type of personality trait. But self-pity doesn't serve you. And as a ascension coach, I'm here to help you. And I most importantly want to help you with the relationship with yourself. That is the most important relationship. But when I have clients or when you are in self-pity, it becomes a roadblock to being able to really transform you and transition you into the life that you want. As long as you're carrying around the luggage of self-pity, you've got your own little pity party coming along with you everywhere you go. It's going to be harder for you to get where you want to go in life. It's going to be harder for you to really blossom and grow and evolve and to have the things that you probably most desire, but you think that you can't have or you think you're not worthy of having. So let's dive into self-pity. How is it defined? Well, like everything in life, definitions are multiple. So I have chosen just a couple. It is a noun, first of all, and we're going to talk about that later. Its general definition is excessive, self-absorbed unhappiness over one's own troubles. Now, let's break that apart. Okay, excessive, we kind of get that. I'm extra in a lot of things, but self-absorbed. Do you really want to be self-absorbed? And do you want to excessively be self-absorbed? And then unhappiness. I can't tell you how many people come to me, and when you ask them, what do you want? They say happiness. But you can't be swimming in a pool of self-pity and say you're going to be happy at the same time. You got to get out of that pool. You got to dry off and really allow the sunshine to hit your skin and feel happy, right? All right. Let's continue on with this definition over one's own troubles. Here's the thing. We all have troubles and we all have varying degrees of troubles, and your perspective over your troubles is very personal. It's very internal. So how you rate your personal troubles is subjective. But let's go on to a different definition. Another definition for self-pity is self-indulgent dwelling on one's own sorrows or misfortunes. So we all kind of understand what overthinking is. That looping of thoughts where you're analyzing, you're thinking, trying to get it right, trying to get it perfect, trying to think of all of the things that could go wrong, all of the predictable and unpredictable situations that occur. This is overthinking. And self-pity is a lot like that, except for in trying to predict an answer or what is going to happen or, all of the things that you can face. You're in this loop of thinking about how terrible your life is, how bad you have it. Like you have it worse than everyone else. Like no one can understand. Nobody can relate. I'm the only one that's going through this, or very few are the only ones that understand and can relate to me. Now, before I go on with this definition, I first want to just clarify my stance on this, because even though I'm an ascension coach and my goal is to help you really live your fantastic life, your fantasy life, I wasn't always the person that I am showing up today as. In the past, I was right there with many of you carrying around my self-pity. I lived in it. I had a lot of it. And people may not have always recognized that in me. They may have only seen my optimism. They may have only seen my smile and my positivity. They may not have known my internal thoughts of not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy, and people pleasing. They may not have known all of my self-pity that I was in. And let me tell you, as a parent of a special needs child, when my daughter was born, did I like really, really step into self-pity. So I am coming from a place of I have been there, I have done that, I have worn that badge and I have ripped it off and I want it to stay off. And it's no longer a badge for me. Okay. I no longer want to be in self-pity. But self-pity, it has its purpose. And we're going to get into that. So please stay tuned. But I just want to talk to you just for a moment because when my child was born, I remember talking to one of my coworkers and close friends, and I remember telling her, like, because I have a special needs kid and my life was hard because that's how I viewed it. That was my perspective. My life was hard to me. I ended up leaving my professional career so that I could go and take my child from therapy to therapy because my child wasn't even able to move. So, like, just even eating was a challenge for my child or being able to turn her head, right? So I was in therapies from the time that my child was born, and I really wanted her to succeed. And it was important for me to make sure she got all the services, right? But in that mindset, even though I was doing something really, really great for her, in my personal life, I was in self-pity. And I remember telling my coworker friend, I was like, I feel like I should get like free YMCA. I don't know if YMCA is everywhere in the world, but that's essentially a community center gym. They do swimming and fitness classes, but then they also do other type of services as well. Like they have a quilting, and a painting club and a reading club and all of these things that are associated with community development. And so that was a form of self-pity, like that I should have been entitled to and have this because of my troubles and my sorrows. And it didn't stop there. It was all sorts of things. Like all of a sudden, when I was in this position in my life, I started to view people differently because of what I was making out of my own troubles and my own circumstance. And I was really looking at my circumstance as being so heavy that I was putting expectations on other people on how they should treat me or what they should give me or whatever it may be for all of you. But I definitely had this like self-pity. And I also would talk to people all the time, like, feel sorry for me. Because when you feel sorry for me, that attention felt really good to me. All right. So I'm telling you now, I lived it for several years and it only made me smaller and it only made me hurt more in the long run. And so this message is important to me because I really want to lift people up. That's ascension. Ascension is rising up, right? I want you to feel better. I want you to have energy, not just be drugging through your day and trying to survive and being on the empty. Like, I want you to thrive. I want you to feel vibrant. I want you to feel inspired and motivated. These are all uplifting types of words, right? And that's what I want for you. And what I'm telling you, and what maybe other people haven't told you before, is you can't be in both states at the same time. You can't be in that happiness you so desire and at the exact same time be in a place of thinking about your sorrows and your troubles and feeling depressed or feeling down and feeling unworthy and unloved. And honestly, this isn't just my opinion. This is how your brain works. Part of what I do when I'm coaching somebody, especially with the subconscious and the hypnotism and the NLP that I do, is when you're in a stuck emotional state, I help anchor positive states into your body. And then I'll do something where I'm chaining your anchors, or maybe I'm collapsing an anchor. But the idea behind it is that your body can only have one state running through its system at one time. And this is how I can collapse a negative state for you. So this is literally the science of how your body and your brain, your central nervous system, everything within your body works. So it's not an opinion here. This is just hard facts. Okay, so I'm going to tell you my definition of self-pity. And it's really simple. It just means feeling sad for yourself. Often because you have suffered more than is fair or is reasonable. And this means that there is a comparison being made by you, probably on a subconscious, unconscious, meaning you're not even aware that you're doing it and it's automatic, right? So, somewhere in your system, in your way of thinking, you're saying, oh, I've got it so much worse than you. Feel sorry for me. Like, or you don't even need somebody else to feel sorry for you. You're doing it yourself. So it's an egocentric way of being where your own perception of a circumstance is valued at being more whatever, more important, more devastating, more hard, like more cruel, more injustice, whatever it is for you than another person. That's the comparison of it. You've got it bad. Okay. So without comparison, how would you know that it is unfair? You're somewhere along your life, you were taught and believed some outline, some labeling system of what is fair. And that was either taught to you or compared. So, like, let me give you a for example on this. When you have never experienced something before, you have nothing to reference it back to. And so there are times like, and this is why we say like in the working world, sometimes you'll hear people say, well, I don't want to hire a green person because they don't know what they don't know. Right. And so they come in and then it can be a huge learning curve and it takes a lot of effort to train that person up. And the person that is that green person, that new hire, right? They don't know that they're making these mistakes or they're not catching on or they're not doing anything because they don't have anything to compare it to. It's their very first experience. Like I've had people that I've coached that have been in their job where they got right out of school and they've been in their job for 30 years. And so they only know this type of working relationship. And so when we start diving into their working circumstances, I'm like, wait a minute. They're doing what? I'm like, let's slow down here. And how are you advocating for yourself? Like, why is this acceptable? And it often is because they don't have any other experience to compare it to. So comparison is, just a tool, but I'm letting you know in self-pity, it can work against you. So have you ever wondered why emotions are nouns when a noun is a person, place, or thing? So if you want to call emotions a thing, if that's how you categorize it, then maybe that makes sense to you. But if you've taken that logical step next, maybe you didn't even know that emotions were nouns. Maybe you always thought that they were verbs. In the past, I thought emotions were verbs, but they're nouns, people, place, or thing, indicating that they're not an action, which is a verb. In the book, it's one of my favorite books, by the way, A Happy Pocket Full of Money by David Cameron Gikandi. I don't know. I'll put it in the show notes. I'm not very good with pronunciations of names. So there's that. He wrote, listen to your feelings and intuition. Honor them over any conflicting thoughts and emotions. Be careful, though, because some thoughts and emotions camouflage themselves as feelings. But be still, and you can distinguish between them. So in this book, he is distinguishing a difference between emotions and feelings. Most people don't understand the difference between emotions and feelings. So in this example that I just given you from A Happy Pocket Full of Money, he is talking about the spiritual difference between the two. where feelings are from the spirit, your soul, your heart level, and your emotions are from your subconscious, which is AKA your past. Yeah, that's where you dig through all of these unconscious thoughts and pull up something in your past so you have something to compare it to. But I want you to look at this from a science or a logical point of view. Let's look at it from that. Emotion is a psychological state of mind. If you want to break it down into a definition, it's a psychological state of the mind. A feeling is the awareness of it. So, kind of like registering the feeling in your body is a feeling. Whereas if you don't feel anything in your body, it is just a mental state. It's something that is going on in your logical, analytical brain, or maybe even your unconscious brain. So, it's the difference between your mind and your body. That's the distinction I want you to walk away with. Emotions versus feelings, your body versus your mind. All right. So I'm going to continue on with this, and I've made some notes for myself, so excuse the page flipping. Emotions are neither good nor bad. By definition, emotions are a state of mind. They can be clues to tell you something about yourself. You learn from your emotions. If you looked at emotions from a detached point of view, like where you don't have a meaning towards them, you don't have a label for them, they would simply be a source of information or data point. And so this kind of goes back to my earlier example. When you don't know something, you don't have anything to compare it to. And so everything that you're doing at this point is extra work for your brain as it analyzes and it tries to do what it does best, right? Which is generalize things. And this is part of your filtering system. This is actually how you learn, is through generalization. So when you have come across something, like if you've never come across a cactus before, and all of a sudden you ran into a cactus, your brain would start going through a filtering system of like, what is this? Is it a food? Is it dangerous? Is it something that can help heal my body? Like it's going to go running through things and it's going to start comparing it to other things. What is this similar to? What is this not similar to? And it's going to try to label it and make it mean something to you. So if you haven't had those kind of experiences before, this is what happens. Now, you're most likely an adult if you're listening to this. So those days are gone. It's very rare now as an adult that you run across something that you've never seen or heard. And honestly, like even when I do run across something that I've never seen or heard, like we were at a game night the other night with friends, and gosh, let me tell you, that was really interesting because we were playing a game like I don't remember what it was called, but like how old are you? Are you old now? Or something along that lines. And so they were comparing kind of uh elderly to teenagers and which one do you kind of fit into? And there were words that teenagers have used that I had never even heard of. So we were Googling some of these things. Now, some of it, like your brain generalizes. So one of the examples was simp. And it's like, okay, your brain can probably jump to conclusion right now what simp means. If a teenager said that's simp, you could probably guess what that means. But there were some other words that I couldn't. And so we were Googling them as a group of older adults, like, what in the world does this mean? Right. And so if you run across something that you don't know today, it's not a huge gap. That learning curve is super small and super fast at this point because you have so many reference points, you have so many labels, you have so many meanings already built up into your brain, and your brain is super efficient. But emotions, like I said, they either become good or bad, not because they have any meaning originally. They're just a state. They're just a state of mind. They become good or bad based on that comparison, based on what you have learned, based on your past experiences. And you, all of you make a labeling of it. You make it mean something. So you've probably heard this before, but human beings are meaning making machines. And that is actually how the brain works. So it is not a judgment against anybody. It is literally how our brain functions to survive. We make things mean something. So you as an individual are labeling what you are feeling in your body or how your state of mind is as good or bad. And like I said kind of before, this can be influenced by past conditioning. So, past conditioning from your culture, your religion, your loved ones, how you were grown up, who you were around, what you were watching on TV, what you hear on the radio. All of these things are helping your subconscious to make meaning out of something. And I'm going to give you a for instance, like more cultures are moving into a perspective that certain emotions are wrong. Or even another way of saying this is a lot more cultures are moving into this anti emotions as a way of being. Like, as in, let's only like reduce ourselves down into feeling happy, sad, mad, or neutral. Like, that's four emotions. And then you may even in certain cultures boil it down to like you're never allowed to be angry, you're never allowed to be mad, right? And so like these are things that you may be experiencing in your own life. I can tell you from the United States, as well as from what I do for a living, many people are taught to suppress their emotions and to avoid them, or to compartmentalize them, or to channel them into actions like sports or competition. Like, as if, oh, you're an angry person, so let's go ahead and put you into wrestling or football or boxing or whatever it may be. I can tell you it doesn't only apply to humans because when we got our German Shepherd puppy like 20 years ago, um, he was viewed as aggressive. When he played with other little puppies his age, when we took him to puppy training school, he would be tackling the other dogs, nippling at them. He was a confident alpha male. And so as he got older, we got kicked out of puppy school. And because he was classified as too aggressive. And then we were told, to look at other avenues for him in order to help him with his aggression. So even as a dog, we were told that he should seek a sport called Schitzhund, which trains dogs to do obedience tracking, this type of stuff, so that he could take out his kind of energy and his aggressiveness in a constructive way. So it doesn't just apply to humans. It happens kind of in many different ways. We'll just summarize it as that. And I want to talk about competition for a second, because it's not just competition in sports, it's also competition in school. Competition to be, Victorian, the class president, competition to get that scholarship, competition to shine more than another person, competition in the workforce to get recognized and to be seen as, one of the leaders in sales, or whatever it may be, so that you can get that promotion, or you can, whatever it is. There's just a ton of competition in our society, and competition often thrives on comparisons. It's kind of hard to actually have competition without comparisons. And there are some places that you see this. So I referenced the YMCA earlier, right? When I first signed up for the YMCA, they had a triathlon, and I was like, oh, awesome. I'm like, I was signing up for it, and I was talking to the front desk person, and I was like, I'm going to win the swimming, because I'm a college swimmer. And so I'm just, excited about this. And the front desk person was like, no, 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 there are no winners here. Right. So there's certain places where we've tried to take out, I say we, society has tried to take out winning from the competition, but it doesn't work the same way. Like, even in that specific example, most people did not complete the competition, though, that they signed up for it, or maybe they only did one proportion of it, or there just wasn't this type of response or this drive to do it. So when you take out the competition, it's something that we have been programmed as a society to view it as one way. And so oftentimes you kind of have this difference between the two. So society as a whole has defined self-pity and has labeled it as something bad. And it has been, so let me state this in another way. Self-pity has been taught to be perceived as harmful. Yet, self-pity has also been argued by some psychologists as a temporary positive way of being. And I can tell you from my own personal experience that self-pity in a hard moment, a hard emotional moment, self-pity feels really good. Okay? That's just my personal perspective. But what psychological psychologists say, counselors say, is that it serves as a protective role. So it's really important that I distinguish that they see it as a positive thing and a temporary solution or time frame. So you may notice that you have a small amount of self pity and it allows you to validate your feelings. It allows you to feel your feelings. And that is kind of what professionals are saying can be a positive thing. Because if we live in a society where you're shoving down your emotions and you don't feel them, it can be very positive to say, you know what, I'm hurt, I'm disappointed, I don't feel good about this, you know, whatever. I feel treated unfairly. So it can be a good place to feel your feelings. It becomes self-pity, in my opinion, not the feeling your feelings becomes self-pity when you dwell in it. So that's where I would make the distinction between professionals. So well, that's just my personal opinion. But I can tell you that oh my gosh, psychologists, they they say it can relieve anxiety in the short term as it provides an escape from reality where you may or may not be ready to accept responsibility for what you face. Okay, but let's go to a question. What happens when you are constantly or persistently in a state of self pity? What happens when self pity becomes a long term solution or a way of being? Then the fantasy writer comes out. And I tell you this that it becomes a cloak that wraps you in darkness and prevents you from objectively seeing your situation. So the downside of self-pity is isolation, low self-esteem, low self-worth, anxiety, depression, lack of action, low vibrations, low motivation, also health issues. Also, let's just take a moment to look at this from the energetic standpoint. Like attracts like. So when you're living from self-pity, you are going to attract like-minded people. So you are going to ultimately gravitate, or people are going to gravitate to you that are also in self-pity. And then you get to have a real self-pity party. It's not just you. You can call up your good friend and you can tell them your self-pity story, and they can hop right on that wagon and just be in self-pity with you and validate your self-pityness. And then it becomes the cycle of living in it and having this reward system because it feels good to be seen. It feels good to be heard. It feels good to have something in common with people. So this is the rabbit hole that you keep spiraling down only to be able to perceive, only to be able to see and perceive how bad you have it. So, what causes you to entertain self pity when you know that it causes anxiety in the long term, when you know that it keeps you in that state of unhappiness? Ultimately, there's a reward. So, what reward are you receiving that you are so unwilling to let go of that you stay in self pity? As a hypnotist and ascension coach, I know that your brain goes towards pleasure and away from pain. So many people start to argue with me like, no, 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 there is no reward to this. But that's just simply not true. This is a universal law. Your brain goes towards pleasure and away from pain. So we already have discovered that self-pity creates pain in your body. That means that there must be a compelling reward. Another way of saying reward is pleasure to keep you in it. So what is self-pity doing for you? Where is it coming from? How long is it lasting? Are you willing to look at that and observe that? Because when you're willing to look at something and observe something, it brings light to the situation. And light is awareness. So it brings awareness. And then when you really start digging, you can get into the root cause of it, which really helps you transition out of it. So I'm going to just talk to you about some of the things that I have seen in clients, people that I've worked with. For some, the reward is manipulation. Now, you may not like me for saying that, but it's very possible that you are into manipulation without even being aware of it. You may not even have the perception of it, but let's talk about it. Some use self-pity as a weapon to get what they want, to get their way, or to get out of their responsibilities. So when you're in self-pity, and you're feeling so bad for yourself, like, oh, I couldn't possibly do this part of my job. I have so much to do, and no, whatever it may be, someone may come along and help you. I see this a lot, honestly, and I don't mean to be stereotypical here, but I do see this as a way of observing, humankind, where I'll see someone be like, oh, I just don't know. And if I could just get help, and oh, I just, I've had all of these terrible things happen to me. And you just go off and list all of those terrible things. Well, you're using your emotions as a form of manipulation to get people to come along inside you and help. So I see this sometimes in parents where they may be like, "Oh, I have it so bad," and they're talking to their kids and they're just wanting their kids to help. But, from a parent standpoint, they're like, "Well, my kids won't help me unless I do this." So, and a lot of times I'm talking about in this situation, the kids are like 30-year-olds. They're not like living in their parents' house. It's not the point where the kids have um they're under their parents' control and authority anymore. They are self-sufficient adults. And so the parents are wanting their kids to come in and do something for them. And they may use their self-pity to manipulate their kids into coming over and helping them or spending time with them or having a check-in daily phone call or whatever it may be. So this is very common that I see this. But let's give you some other examples. Another reward I see my clients doing is that it keeps them where they are. And that doesn't seem like a reward, but it is, because you stay in your comfort zone. And when you stay in your comfort zone, you don't have to change. You don't have to go through that integration anxiety of doing something different and figuring out. So the reward is staying exactly the same, having something predictable and known. And when you don't have to change, you also often turn to blaming others. So it means that you can blame someone as an excuse for not doing what they said that they were going to do. So, like, for instance, I see this a lot in relationships, and I'm going to clarify this. So you may say, well, I don't like how my spouse does this, or my spouse never helps with the dishes. So that justifies me not having to do X, Y, and Z. That justifies me not having to do the laundry. That justifies me not having to go above and beyond or express my love, whatever it may be. Well, you're just essentially feeling sorry for yourself instead of addressing the problem. And then you're using that as a way of getting out of your responsibilities. All right. Those are just some examples. Now, as a coach, this technique doesn't work for me. I don't go for self-pity. The truth is, you have dominion over your thoughts. So I know a lot of people, myself included in the past, I wasn't able to see things objectively. I was in my emotions, and my emotions were on unhappy thoughts. And so I wasn't thinking from a PowerPoint of stand viewpoint. I wasn't thinking from a powerful viewpoint. I wasn't thinking that I had dominions over my thoughts. I wasn't thinking that I was personally making a choice to keep thinking about these unhappy thoughts. So that's what I would tell you. If you were working with me, I would be telling you that you're choosing to dwell on this. Whether you like me or not for saying that, that's not the point. My job is to help you. And I would let you know that you're choosing to dwell on this. This is a personal choice, and you're getting some type of reward from it. You can't be a victim to the thoughts that you are choosing to dwell upon. It isn't victimhood when you are in control. It's a lack of accountability for choosing what you are creating in your mind. And the good news is you do have dominion over your thoughts, and you can choose differently. So this episode is getting on the longer side, so I'm just going to wrap up here and let you know that I'm available to work with you and to coach you through self-pity. 2, to let you know ultimately this is a choice. And 3, to encourage you to really look at the rewards that you're getting, to pause the next time that you're getting into self-pity and see how it's serving you. And then again, it goes back to your choice. Do you want to continue to operate with this, knowing now that it keeps you in a state of unhappiness? Now, there are all sorts of things in life, all sorts of circumstances that happen to us that may be unfair. But you can either, be a part of the problem or be a part of the solution, right? And I'm not talking about that as a society viewpoint. I'm talking about it with you and your internal state and how you feel inside. Because when you continue to loop on unhealthy thoughts for yourself, you're lowering your vibrations, you're lowering your energy, you're lowering all sorts of things, your self-worth. And I would tell you that you can choose to let go, change your thoughts, and come from it from an objective viewpoint. Look at the resources you need in this situation and what you're not getting and what you're seeking from other people, and provide it for yourself. And then go back and look at that circumstances, not from a needy standpoint, but from an empowered standpoint. And what could you do differently? Like for example, on the parents that are using self-pity to get their kids to do something that are adults, right? If you go from the viewpoint of I've asked them and they are unwilling, then you can start to look at this objectively, like what is your relationship? What boundaries have you created? How have you trained them? Are you willing to start working through that relationship so that it starts turning in a different direction? Because right now, like a boat, you have trained people how to treat you, and that boat is just going in one direction. And to turn a huge boat like a cruise, it takes time, and it's a very slow turn, right? It's not like a speedboat that does a 180, whips around. It's a slow turn. And are you willing to go through that to ultimately get to a place where you don't have to be in self-pity to be able to have the life you want, to be able to be treated how you want to be treated? All right, everyone. I hope this episode was really helpful for you. And as always, I would tell you that you matter. I'm sending my love to you. I would also ask you if you would be willing to take less than 2 minutes out of your time today and go to one of the podcast places that you listen to and rate this, just so that we can help get this word out to more people and to help more people. As you know, I have a lot of authors. I have a lot of guests on here that are all trying to make a difference in the world, and their voices matter and their stories matter. And a lot of people have come on this show and shown a lot of vulnerability, myself included, and they're all doing the same thing. The whole purpose of this podcast is to go through your life lessons, the hardships that you've had, and really show people how you've gotten through it, how to help you get through it. And so I really find value in what this podcast offers. You're listening, and there's a reason you're listening, and you probably do too. So let's see if we can't help the world as a whole. The other thing I would leave you with is that the transformational coaching program that I signed up with in 2021 that really changed my life, it is about to launch. And if you are interested in going to that program, which I highly recommend, and I also work for, so I'm just going to be transparent about that. I do work for them, but because I work for them, right, I also have a wonderful discount that you can get into at least the intro of it. So they have something called the Be Do Have. It's a way of helping you understand how the brain works, how to get transformation. And I believe it's like 97 or $99 for you to sign up for this. And within my show notes, I will have a code for you to be able to use that allows you to get it for free. So even if you don't sign up for the transformational coaching program, I find this Be Do Have series to be super, super, super helpful. And I even go back and listen to it repeatedly myself. So that will be there for you. I want to send you guys so much love, and until next time.